Imagine this. A single shift in the Earth's atmosphere can lead to catastrophic floods in one part of the world and devastating droughts in another. And here's the twist. This isn't a distant future scenario, it's already happening. And in 2025, it's set to get even worse. La Niña is back. And its icy grip on the planet will send shockwaves through weather systems everywhere. Stronger hurricanes, harsher winters, and crops struggling to survive in extreme conditions. This isn't a prediction, it's a warning. But what exactly will La Niña do to Earth in the year ahead? And more importantly, are we prepared for the chaos it's about to unleash? In 2023 and 2024, the world felt the scorching wrath of one of the strongest El Niño events on record. Heat waves burned through cities, coral reefs turned bone white, and rivers dried up. But as the planet begins to cool in the Pacific, the pendulum swings to the opposite extreme. La Niña is here, and while it might sound less threatening than its fiery counterpart, don't be fooled. This cold phase is no less destructive, it's just different. To understand why 2025's La Niña is such a big deal, we need to talk about the forces driving it. Picture the vast Pacific Ocean, stretching from the Americas to Asia. Normally, trade winds blow warm water toward the west, leaving cooler water to rise near South America in a process called upwelling. During La Niña, these trade winds grow even stronger, dragging warm waters even further west, and causing an intense upwelling of cold water in the eastern Pacific. At first glance, it might seem like a harmless natural cycle. After all, cooler water sounds like a relief after the heat of El Niño, right? But the reality is far more complicated and far more dangerous. The changes start in the Pacific, but they don't stay there. These shifting ocean temperatures disrupt the Walker circulation, a massive airflow system that spans the equator, and that ripple effect spreads across continents. This is why meteorologists around the globe are on edge. They know that La Niña doesn't just alter the weather, it flips the script entirely, creating conditions no one expects. But here's the kicker. What you experience depends entirely on where you are. For some, it means relentless rain. For others, it means months without a drop of water. And as 2025 approaches, scientists are already seeing the signs. Models predict a moderate to strong La Niña, with a 74% chance it'll persist well into 2026. But what does that actually mean for you and your corner of the world? Let's break it down. Let's start with North America. During a La Niña event, the continent is split into two weather extremes. In the northern parts, including much of Canada and the northern United States, La Niña brings colder, wetter winters. Think blizzards, ice storms, and months of relentless snowfall. While some may embrace this as a chance to hit the slopes or enjoy picturesque winter scenes, it's a nightmare for those who rely on clear skies and stable conditions. Roads will become impassable, heating bills will soar, and power grids could buckle under the strain of freezing temperatures. If you thought last winter was bad, buckle up. 2025 might just set a new bar for harsh winters, but head south and it's a completely different story. La Niña pushes moisture away from the southern United States, leaving states like Texas, New Mexico and Arizona facing warmer, drier conditions. For farmers, this spells disaster. Crops that depend on winter rainfall may fail, leading to food shortages and skyrocketing prices. Cities in these regions, already battling water scarcity, will face tougher restrictions as reservoirs shrink and drought conditions intensify. And it doesn't stop there. Warmer weather and drier landscapes create the perfect breeding ground for wildfires. Picture thousands of acres of land going up in flames, with smoke darkening skies for miles around. It's a terrifying thought, but one that's all too likely in a La Niña year. Now cross the Pacific, and the story takes another twist. Australia and Southeast Asia brace for what many call the rain bomb. Here, La Niña's stronger trade winds mean an influx of warm, moist air, leading to torrential rainfall and flooding. For countries like Indonesia and the Philippines, which already experience monsoon seasons, La Niña turns those rains into unrelenting deluges. Rivers overflow, landslides bury villages, and millions of lives are thrown into chaos. In Australia, where the 2020 La Niña led to some of the worst flooding in decades, 2025 could see a repeat, or worse. Entire towns might be submerged, and recovery efforts stretch thin as the rains continue to pour. Meanwhile, in Africa, La Niña creates a patchwork of impacts. Western regions like Nigeria and Ghana often see heavier rainfall, which can lead to flash floods and the destruction of crops. But on the eastern side of the continent, the opposite happens. Countries like Kenya and Ethiopia endure severe droughts, as the rain that typically sustains their agriculture shifts westward. These droughts don't just affect crops, they devastate entire ecosystems. Rivers dry up, wildlife struggles to find water, and communities are forced to travel further and further just to meet basic needs. And while most of Europe is somewhat removed from the immediate effects of La Niña, it's not entirely off the hook. The continent often experiences cooler than average winters during these events, particularly in central and western regions. For countries already grappling with rising energy costs, a colder winter means higher heating demands and potential energy shortages. Eastern Europe, on the other hand, could face drier conditions, with less snowfall than usual. This might seem like a small blessing, until you realise that less snow means less water in reservoirs when it melts, setting the stage for water scarcity in the spring. While these regional impacts are dramatic, the global ripple effects of La Niña are even more unsettling. One of the most alarming concerns is the heightened intensity of hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean. La Niña creates the perfect conditions for storms to form and grow into monstrous cyclones. Warm ocean waters provide the energy, while the strengthened trade winds steer these storms across the Atlantic, often straight toward the Caribbean and the eastern United States. The result? More hurricanes, stronger hurricanes, and longer hurricane seasons. For coastal communities, this isn't just a weather inconvenience, it's a life-altering threat. Entire cities could be battered by relentless winds, torrential rain, and storm surges that swallow neighbourhoods whole. Think back to some of the most destructive hurricanes in recent memory, and now imagine those storms amplified. That's what La Niña could bring in 2025. Recovery from such events can take years, and the economic costs, already staggering, are only expected to rise. But it's not just the Atlantic that faces this storm surge. The Pacific too sees an uptick in typhoons during La Niña, threatening countries like Japan, China, and the Philippines with devastating impacts. Beyond the immediate dangers of extreme weather, La Niña events disrupt the delicate balance of ecosystems worldwide. Take the Pacific Ocean, for example. The intensified upwelling of cold, nutrient-rich water during La Niña might sound like a boon for marine life, as it supports the growth of phytoplankton, the foundation of the oceanic food chain. However, the colder surface waters can also shift fish populations away from their usual habitats. For coastal communities that depend on fishing, this can spell economic disaster. Fishermen in South America, for instance, could find their nets empty as fish migrate to warmer waters or fail to thrive in colder conditions. The stress on ecosystems doesn't end there. In regions like the Amazon rainforest, La Niña's dry conditions can increase the likelihood of wildfires, threatening one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. Meanwhile, in wetter areas, excessive rainfall can overwhelm natural systems, leading to soil erosion and the destruction of habitats. Coral reefs, already reeling from the heat stress of El Niño, may face additional challenges as shifts in water temperature and ocean currents disrupt their recovery. The ripple effect is clear. What happens in the Pacific doesn't stay in the Pacific. It impacts every corner of the globe. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of La Niña is its unpredictability. While scientists have made incredible strides in understanding the mechanics of the El Niño Southern Oscillation, predicting the exact impacts of a La Niña event remains a challenge. Weather models can give us a general idea, but local variations can throw those predictions into disarray. One region might experience catastrophic flooding, while another, just a few hundred miles away, sees no significant change. This unpredictability makes it incredibly difficult for governments, farmers, and communities to prepare. And then there's the wild card of climate change. As global temperatures continue to rise, the dynamics of La Niña, and ENSO as a whole, are shifting in ways we don't fully understand. Some researchers believe that climate change is intensifying these natural cycles, making strong La Niña and El Niño events more frequent and more severe. Others warn that the relationship between global warming and ENSO is far more complex and could lead to entirely new patterns of weather extremes. What we do know is that the stakes are higher than ever. In a world already grappling with rising sea levels, shrinking ice caps and record-breaking heat waves, the added layer of La Niña's chaos is a recipe for unprecedented challenges. As La Niña tightens its grip in 2025, the global food supply faces one of its toughest tests yet. Agriculture is highly sensitive to changes in weather, and the impacts of La Niña will be felt from the rice paddies of Asia to the wheat fields of North America. In Southeast Asia, where La Niña typically brings relentless rains, rice farmers could see their crops drowned by flooding. What should have been a season of abundant harvests could instead become a race to salvage what little remains. Across the Pacific in South America, the story is just as grim. Brazil, one of the world's largest producers of soybeans and coffee, could face devastating droughts that wither crops and decimate yields. Meanwhile, in Africa, the divide between East and West grows starker. Western nations may struggle to manage excessive rainfall that washes away topsoil, while the Eastern nations, especially those already suffering from food insecurity, battle prolonged droughts. For millions of people, this isn't just about economic loss. It's a fight for survival. Livestock farmers too are bracing for the worst. In drought-stricken areas, grazing land will dry up, leaving herds with little to eat. In wetter regions, floods can spread diseases among livestock, further threatening food supplies. But the effects of La Niña on food security don't stop at the farm. They extend into global supply chains, impacting the availability and prices of staples like wheat, corn and coffee. As supply dwindles, prices soar, leaving the most vulnerable populations unable to afford basic necessities. The recent El Niño already sent shockwaves through global markets, and 2025's La Niña could push them to the breaking point. In a world still recovering from the disruptions of the COVID-19 pandemic and ongoing conflicts, La Niña's added pressure could lead to a new wave of economic instability. Beyond food, water scarcity is another looming crisis. In regions where La Niña reduces rainfall, reservoirs that provide drinking water and irrigation could reach dangerously low levels. Cities like Cape Town, which came perilously close to running out of water during a previous drought, are likely watching the forecasts with trepidation. On the flip side, areas experiencing heavy rains may find themselves dealing with contaminated water supplies as floods overwhelm sanitation systems. The irony is cruel. Some regions will have too little water, while others will have too much, and neither will be equipped to handle the consequences. As governments and international organisations scramble to respond, the unequal impacts of La Niña will become glaringly obvious. Wealthier nations may have the resources to mitigate some of the damage, but poorer countries will bear the brunt of the crisis. Emergency aid, infrastructure repairs, and recovery efforts will stretch already limited budgets to their breaking points, and while short-term solutions like food aid and water relief can alleviate immediate suffering, the long-term challenges of adapting to a world increasingly shaped by extreme weather remain unresolved. Amid all this turmoil, scientists continue to sound the alarm. They know that La Niña isn't just a weather event. It's a stark reminder of how interconnected our planet truly is. Changes in one part of the world ripple across continents, affecting everything from ecosystems to economies. And with climate change adding fuel to the fire, these cycles are becoming more erratic, more intense, and more dangerous. The question isn't whether we can adapt, it's whether we can do so quickly enough to keep up. The final piece of the La Niña puzzle lies in its lasting impact on the planet's ecosystems and our collective response to it. As the cooler waters of the Pacific intensify, the domino effect on global biodiversity becomes hard to ignore. In the oceans, fish populations that thrive during neutral conditions may struggle to adapt to the sudden changes in water temperature and nutrient availability. While the upwelling of cold water during La Niña can temporarily boost some marine ecosystems, the benefits are unevenly distributed. Species that depend on stable conditions face the risk of migration disruptions, breeding failures, and dwindling numbers. On land, the story is equally dire. In tropical rainforests like the Amazon, La Niña's dry conditions could lead to unprecedented wildfire activity. These fires don't just destroy trees, they release massive amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, accelerating global warming and further destabilizing the climate. And while some regions may see their ecosystems flourish under La Niña's cooler, wetter influence, others will face cascading failures as plants, animals, and entire habitats are pushed beyond their limits. But perhaps the most haunting aspect of La Niña is its ability to highlight the vulnerabilities of human systems. In cities, the infrastructure we depend on, roads, bridges, water treatment plants, will be tested to their breaking points. Flooded streets will disrupt transportation networks, leaving millions stranded. Power grids, already stressed by shifting weather patterns, may buckle under the weight of increased demand in colder regions or storm damage in wetter ones. The economic toll of repairing these damages will be staggering, further stretching governments already grappling with inflation and resource shortages. Yet amid this chaos, there's also a glimmer of hope. La Niña, like its counterpart, El Niño, offers a valuable opportunity for scientists to deepen their understanding of Earth's climate system. Each event serves as a natural experiment, revealing new insights into how the atmosphere, oceans, and ecosystems interact. With improved satellite technology and climate modelling, researchers are better equipped than ever to track and predict the impacts of these events. This knowledge is crucial not just for preparing for future ENSO cycles, but also for adapting to the broader challenges posed by climate change. Still, knowledge alone isn't enough. As La Niña unfolds in 2025, it will demand action on an unprecedented scale. Communities will need to come together to weather the storms, literally and figuratively. Investments in resilient infrastructure, sustainable agriculture, and disaster preparedness will be key to minimizing the damage. And on a global scale, collaboration will be essential. After all, La Niña doesn't respect borders. The droughts, floods, and storms it brings are a shared challenge, one that requires shared solutions. As we look ahead to 2025 and beyond, the lessons of La Niña are clear. Our planet is more interconnected than we often realize, and the balance of its natural systems is more delicate than we'd like to admit. While we can't stop La Niña from happening, we can prepare for its impacts and use it as a wake-up call to build a more resilient, adaptive world. Because in the face of nature's extremes, the greatest strength we have is the ability to learn, adapt, and act.